So it's now time to wrap up this application. We've got a few final things to do in this video to complete the application. So in previous videos, of course, we've set up the basic application, the YouTube activity, as well as the standalone activity. And I showed you two ways of playing videos and also a way of playing a playlist. So the only thing really that's left to do now is to implement a layout menu on the main activity so that when you start the application, you've then got access to YouTube activity and standalone activity. So let's go ahead and actually do that. So what we want to do first is we want to actually apply the same buttons that we applied in the content standalone XML file and put that in content activity just to save us a bit of typing. So I'm going to click in there. Go to text. I'm going to come up here to content standalone and I'm going to actually copy the entire contents there. And I'm going to then go into content main. So you can double click it there to start it. We're going to paste that code in there. So we've just replaced the actual layout in content_main, which of course is attached to main activity. And once we've done that, we need to make a few little changes. First of all, we need to change this reference to standalone activity. So that actually now points to main activity. So I'm going to select main activity like that. We're going to change here, where it's got button play video, we're going to change that to, we'll call that button play single. So button plays single, like so. We're going to change this text to play a single video. And we're going to use that little trick to extract string resource. And we'll put play, and then making sure that you've chosen a unique code that hasn't already been added. In previous videos, play single video. And likewise for playlist, we're going to change that as well. We'll call that standalone submenu because it's really another menu that we click that opens up standalone activity, and that's actually got two options on it. And again, we'll choose extract string resource, and we'll call that standalone _menu, like so. And we'll call this one BTN standalone, like so. So that should be all the changes we need to make at this stage to content_main. But what we'll need to do is what we'll do first is we'll check it looks okay, clicking on design. We've got a rendering problem, which usually points to me not remembering to make a change. So go back to text and have a look at that. And the problem we've got here is activity_standalone. That's actually wrong. So that should have been activity_main, of course. So that's activity_main. If you go back and have a look at design again, notice the error's now gone away. And we've got our two options. Play a single video. So when that is clicked, it's going to go to YouTube activity, the code in there, and standalone submenu. When that is clicked, it's actually going to invoke the standalone activity. So that's all working okay. So what we need to do is go into our main activity now and actually implement that code. And there's one thing I didn't actually tell you to do, which you may or may not have to do. You may actually have to remove this code or comment this code out, depending on, again, on your setup. Because you notice if I go back to YouTube activity, I did actually comment that out, the toolbar. There's those lines 24 and 25, I commented that out. Some students have reported that they'll actually get an error if that's in there. So if that's the case, by all means, comment that out. Likewise for standalone activity, you may have to actually do that as well. Up here, you may actually have to comment those out. But as you can see, the code's working without any problems on my installation and my computer. But if you do get that problem, by all means, comment that out as we've done here in lines 24 and 25. But I'm going to leave it for now because it's working fine. But what we need to do is we need to create a few buttons. So I'm going to come up here under the public class definition and type private button single, like so, single, and private button standalone. And that's the two options for the layout that we've just worked on. Then we're going to come down here under the set support toolbar and actually add those. So we can type button single equals button find view by ID r.id.button single, and button standalone equals button find view by ID r.id.button, and of course that's going to be the button standalone so that we can actually get access to the standalone submenu. We also, now that we've done that, we want to come up here and do the similar thing that we did for standalone activity. So we want to do an implements view dot on click listener, like so. And of course we'll get that error. And again, you can type that all on the same line if you've got enough screen real estate to do that. And we're going to come down here to the bottom, make a bit of space. I'm going to do a command N for generate and select implement methods. There's only one there, and I'm going to press enter to select it. And of course we need to implement that particular method so that we can invoke an intent like we did for the standalone activity. before we do that, we need to actually set our listeners as we did with the standalone activity. So it's button single dot set on click listener this, and likewise for button standalone dot set on click listener this as well. And that's again to associate the listener with this class, so that if button the single button or the standalone button is clicked, it actually will be calling the code that's in this onClick method. And we're going to do pretty much exactly like we did for the standalone activity. Intent equals null. We had a switch, which is going to be v.get.id, which again is which button was tapped effectively. And in the case of r.id.button play single, we're going to type intent equals new intent. That's going to be main activity dot this, and then it's going to be YouTube activity dot class. So YouTube activity dot class is the one that we want to access if that first button is actually ticked or tapped, I should say, and that should be intent, which will stop that other or fix that other error up. Then we want to break out of that. In case r.id.button standalone, intent equals new intent, main activity dot this again, and standalone activity dot class, because we want to call the standalone activity class if the standalone button on the screen is actually tapped. Then we add a default case, which we shouldn't need, but in case you modify the app down the, or before we do that, actually we need to do a break. It was telling me, you notice there, with I couldn't go back, tab back, and that's because we didn't have a break in there, so that was subtly reminding us of that. We now need to add a default, just a default, and we're not going to do any processing with that. That's if neither of those buttons were tapped, which shouldn't happen because we've only got the two buttons. Then the last thing we need to do is if intent not equal to null, start activity, intent. So in this case, the intent, we're using that for our own code, whereas of course in the standalone activity, we were calling YouTube functionality from the jar file ultimately. That's the code that was actually in here. So we were calling the YouTube standalone player and creating the video intent or create the playlist intent. But here on the main activity, what we're doing is we're actually calling a class so we're passing the context, which it needs is part of this application, and then we're telling it the name of the class to actually invoke based on what's been tapped. So now that we can do that, we should actually be able to actually do a test run of this to make sure it's actually all working properly. So what I'm going to do is just start the recorder on my device so that we can actually see what's on the screen. I'm going to start that. I'm going to start the recording. So I'm actually going to, now I'm in main activity, I'm going to right click main activity and click on run main activity. And again, you can also click on this run button if you want to, but I'm just going to click on run main activity. So let's actually click over now and we'll come over and actually have a look and see what it looks like on my Android device again. So you can see we're now running it okay, and we've got the two menu options, play a single video and standalone submenu. So if I start with play a single video, click on that. We should go, and you can see we're getting the messages, the toast messages. So we know that we're actually in the YouTube activity, and I'll just check that it does play. We can see the pop-up message there. Pause, so that's all working okay. So now I'm going to click on back. And that takes us back to the standard menu again, the main activity, essentially. And click on standalone submenu. Now we've got the standalone activity you can see on the screen, and I can click on play video from within that. And that's obviously accessing the video a different way. We're not getting the toast pop-ups anymore, and I can click on play. Skip the ad. Pause. So that's all working okay. I'm going to click on back again. We're back to the standalone activity menu. Click on play playlist. We should have our playlist which we can play.
Are you watching all of this on a little phone? Think of all the effort we go to. All of this. Hey!
Skip the ad, Game of Thrones fans. Pause, and notice I can go playlist. So we're in our playlist, we can go to the next one if we want to. Previous, I'm not even waiting for the videos to start, and pause. And I click on back again, and we're back in our standalone activity. Click on back one more time, we click it, we're back into the main menu. So that's it, that's the YouTube application now finished. I'll switch back over to the main screen now. And I'll just close down this window now. So I'm just going to do a Command 6, which is Alt F6 for Windows Linux to close that window down. Okay, so that's the application running and we're actually done, but there's a few more little minor things we need to do to actually finish off. Now, the first one, well actually both of them are actually done in the Android manifest file. So I'm going to open up that. And you notice that what we've actually done is we've added this intent filter to each of our activities. And we did that during the development so that we're able to go to a particular activity, right click it and actually run it. But now we've actually finished the application. I'll just go back to the Android manifest file again. You'll find that will actually stop the application. Well, it will actually still enable the application to run, but when we actually click the run button, it's not necessarily going to start the main activity. So what we're going to do is actually remove the intent filter from the YouTube activity and the standalone activity, but leave it in the main activity. And so that when the application starts up, it's going to actually launch the main activity, which of course now has the menu that we have actually created in this video. So I'm going to go ahead and actually delete the intent filter there, and also down here, making sure you don't delete anything else. Now, the other thing is, in some situations, depending on the type of phone you've got, you might actually need to add another setting to enable this to actually work. And the actual setting will be actually added here just after the label. So you go into the activity and actually type Android exported equals true. And that just helps with some phone devices to be able to actually play the actual applications. And you might actually have to actually go through and do the same for all three activities, because of course we've got three activities in this application like so. And as I said, it really comes down to the individual features on particular phones. With my Google Nexus, I don't need to do that, but some students have actually reported that the actual code couldn't be run on their device until they added that. So don't add this code that I've shown you, this Android : exported equals true, unless you can't run it on your Android device. If you can't run it, certainly add it, and try actually adding it just to the main activity first to see whether that works. And if it does, then you're good to go. But if you also want to individually run the YouTube activity and standalone activity by right-clicking, as I showed you before, then you can add it to those sections as well. So I'm going to actually remove it from these two sections. And I'm just going to leave it in there because it won't affect me from my Google Nexus phone either way. But again, if you've got problems running the application, you're getting some sort of weird error, this has helped other students actually run the application by adding this Android : exported equals true. Okay, so that's it. That's the end of this section now. We've actually completed the YouTube app. In the next section, we're going to start looking at a Flickr application. And we're going to be talking about material design and just really taking it up to the next level and building a more complex application. So I'll see you in the next section.